This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You gotta work. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome. Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV, where we find the facts, kill the spin, and tell it like it is. Well, it's back to business as usual now. My team has had enough of a break, so they're all back firing on all 12 cylinders. And boy, we've got a huge year. 2026 is going to be enormous as we take on the mainstream media, not to beat them, but to be them. You'll be seeing all kinds of interesting developments as a result of that across the next 12 months. And please like and subscribe by going to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. If you can't find us immediately, put my name in as well, Lembit, 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 and then you'll get straight there. Please do like and subscribe. Won't cost you anything, take you 10 seconds. And we've got so many great shows, including some fascinating new guests and some fascinating new shows too. More of that on another occasion. I want to get straight to the point today because we have a very interesting guest, as we usually do on a Monday if you're watching it live. That's Warren Thornton. He'll be joining me in just a moment. Here's the context. In recent days, once again, if you're watching this live, Donald Trump decided to nab the Supremo of Venezuela, the man in charge, the man doing Trump's job in Venezuela. Mr. Maduro was, well, some say kidnapped, but I'd simply say arrested and taken to New York under charge of being involved with drugs trafficking. Trump's made no secret of this accusation and is clearly trying to justify what he's done on the basis of it being a corruption busting action. He's not saying that this is a political action. Interesting. We'll see what Warren thinks about that in a minute. But that he's trying to bring the runaway drugs problems of America under control. Now, there's a whole debate to be had about what is the best kind of drugs policy and whether prohibition works. That's for another time. What I want to ask today is whether Donald Trump has gone too far, whether he's set dangerous precedents, whether what he's done is actually going to be counterproductive to the overall interests of the United States of America. In essence, is this a Trump card or a busted flush? Well, joining me now is investigative reporter and journalist Warren Thornton. Warren, good to see you. How have you been?
I've been absolutely fine, Lembit. I think I'm in much better shape than Maduro at the moment.
You weren't fine recently, though. I let slip that you were a bit under the weather. Was that bad cooking?
Yeah, it was something to eat that didn't agree with me, but we recovered as usual.
Well, you look in fine form now. I'm glad you're okay. You're essential to the 2026 mission of Unprecedented TV. Now, let's talk about this. As you know, Donald Trump authorized a rather substantial military intervention in Venezuela, which resulted in the successful acquisition of Mr. Maduro, the president of Venezuela. What was this military operation about? You're a military man. Can you explain it in terms that we understand?
Yeah, so the idea was to obviously to grab Maduro. Now, this sort of thing has been tried in the past, and sometimes with terrible results. One can only remember back to the 70s and some of the failed missions to release hostages that America mounted, which absolutely went terribly wrong and gave them more prisoners. This was, shall we say, America flexing its muscle, showing that it can do what it likes in its own hemisphere. And of course, it is a much weaker, shall we say, country. The other thing that is very, very important to remember here, without inside help, without somebody on the inside, Lembit, this could never been have achieved. Now, they did have, it was a remarkably, shall we say, fairly straightforward, as these things go, NAB operation, whether you want to call it abduction, whether you want to call it arrest, whether you want to call it kidnap. But when you are grabbing somebody from another country or trying to grab somebody's president from another country, that is a huge step to take. And there are lots of other political things. But on a military level, very simply, they had to have somebody on the inside, one would say very, very close in on his security detail, to be able to carry it out as quickly and as efficiently as they did.
There's been a lot of chat in the media. As it says, the Allies divided over mission to remove Maduro, but Nicolás Maduro, I think is his full name. But actually, I have to say, I think that the coalition of the Wallies, as we're increasingly calling them, have been rather mealy-mouthed about it. They don't know what to say.
No, they don't, because what they cannot say, and you have to remember that they've been pushing the Ukraine war very, very hard. Now, if they turn around and say what Trump did was absolutely fine, and this is not a problem, and he's allowed to do that in his own hemisphere, then what's to stop Putin doing the same with Zelensky? Because they can't then come out and go, oh, no, this is totally terrible. It's okay when America do it, but if Russia do it. Now, I don't think Russia for 1 second are going to think about doing anything like that. But they have now the green light to do that. And so do China in Taiwan. So this has much more implications. And the reason they're being so mealy-mouthed about it is the simple fact that if they say this is okay, then the gloves are off. The international rules-based order that everybody talks about, well, Trump just ripped that up and threw it in the bin and basically said, I'll do what I'm going to do and you can't stop me.
Yeah, this is the thing. That Trump has not been mealy-mouthed. He had this press conference, which I've watched. And incidentally, if you want to see more of this press conference, you'll be able to see it on Warren Thornton Daily, right here on Unprecedented TV. In a short while, about 11 a.m. GMT. So we'll not play it now, but Donald Trump was quite clear that he was trying to bring a criminal to justice. That's his entire argument, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's the one they've got to use, because if it's a political reason or for reasons that we honestly suspect are correct, and that is oil and obviously the minerals now, if you have to ask yourself, and they do, they have to send it down this line that he is a criminal. That's why they've sort of walked him in chains. And again, once again, international law says you shouldn't do this. That you shouldn't, if you have a defeated country or whatever, you shouldn't take their president, and you shouldn't expose him to this sort of media and everything else. Well, as far as they're concerned, the gloves are off. But the problem that you have here is you have to show that he's a criminal, not just come up with some idiotic things, as they have done with him, owning a machine gun or whatever. But it's perfectly legal for him to do that in his own country. Here's where we have a problem. And many people are going to be shouting also. There's something else that nobody's talked about, is the Epstein angle, where, of course, that was due out. Literally, that was due to all to come to fruition yesterday. And of course, people will say, well, Pam Bondi can suddenly get a president from another country into her custody, and she can charge him with all sorts of crimes, get him ready for court, and yet she couldn't do a damn thing with the Epstein list. So there's multiple layers to this.
Yeah, I don't have that much sympathy for the argument. This is all about disguising the Jeffrey Epstein files. It's too complicated, I think. I think it's more likely to be something that's been planned for a long time. Trump wanted to show himself to be the tough guy, and then in his press conference, he was all set to justify this on, as you say, the basis of it being an action to bring a criminal to justice. Trump seems to be absolutely convinced that he's got the right to tell us that Maduro was in some way involved in cartel-like drugs operations.
Yeah,
what do you think?
That simply isn't true. I mean, the cartel that everybody is saying he literally belongs to doesn't really exist. It's one of those sort of made-up things. But then again, we've not seen any evidence of drug boats. You would have thought if there was a drug smuggling boat, rather than blow them all up, you would have just grabbed one of those boats, shown the drugs that were on it, and hey presto, everybody is off your back. But they haven't done that. So this does smack of a CIA-led operation. And let's face it, when it comes to regime change in South America or Central America, America have a long history dating back to the 1950s of overthrowing governments or removing or killing dictators or people that they deem as dictators in their hemisphere.
I want to go back a little bit to a predecessor of Maduro's, Hugo Chavez. I have been lucky enough to know people who have met him. There he is, died comparatively young, actually. He seemed to be phenomenally popular in Venezuela, charismatic, clearly a socialist. I'm told warm-hearted. The lady who told me about him, she was totally starstruck by him. But he wasn't a great friend of the North Americans, really. I know that in your show, you actually will have a clip of him predicting what's happened to Maduro, of accusations of drug smuggling and so forth.
It's pretty much the only way they can get them, Lembit, because at the end of the day, I mean, you can call people all sorts of things, can't you? And try and make that stick. But of course, drug smuggling's a nice, easy one. Plant a couple of kilos, in a bag or whatever, and claim that it belonged to so and so, or that he was ahead of this thing or that thing. It is something that they've always got the South American leaders on when they've tried to remove them. That drugs has always been the preferred choice of blame, shall we say?
Yeah, Maduro and Chavez obviously knew each other. There they are together. I don't know so much about Nicolás and Maduro. I've only really become interested in him recently because he's been so much the object of hate for Donald Trump and his team. But I sigh because it does seem quite heavy-handed of America to go in and nab a head of state. And the precedent, we'll talk about the precedent after the break, but do you think that Donald Trump is acting on a whim, or do you think he had this plan for a while?
I think this has been planned by the State Department and the CIA for a long while. Rubio is very much at the forefront of this. And of course, the CIA director behind the scenes, Ratcliffe, is also very, very keen on this. They've always had a thing for Venezuela. They've got a bit of a thing for Cuba. Don't discount anything happening there. Anything that is in their hemisphere that they don't consider a friendly government, or if they have resources that they want. And you cannot get away from the fact that if this was just pineapples, would they, if their main export was pineapples, would the Americans be going in? The oil companies are mixed up in this up to their necks, and very simply, they don't think they've been getting their fair share, or it is being run properly so that they can make the profits that they want to make. So the oil companies are 100% well invested in this, as is their money in obviously in America and everything else. So there's many layers to this, and of course Trump now has to show beyond all doubt that of course this guy is a complete drug lord and all the rest of it, because if not, the accusations, and I'm just saying this is a stick to beat the opponents with, your Epsteins, your oil, your minerals, your everything else, they're all going to be sticks that they can come back and beat him with.
Yeah, and how's he going to get a fair trial?
He's not. It's as simple as that.
There's so much on this.
I mean,
there's so much resting on this.
Even the judge, somebody. Yeah, even the judge that's been appointed here is a hardliner. So we're going to get this. It's not like he's going to get a fair jury trial or anything else. This is going to be a kangaroo court, pretty much the same thing they did to the likes of Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi in Libya. It has got horrible connotations, because this is just America showing that if we don't like someone, regardless of what other people may think or whatever, we will just remove him. Now, this is a real problem for the rest of the world, Lembit, because you've either got to condemn it, which I do. You cannot go into somebody else's sovereign nation and pinch their leader, no matter how much you dislike them or assassinate them. But America seems to think that is perfectly okay to do this. And of course, try that with China, try that with North Korea, try that with Russia. And now, of course, that gives them carte blanche to do what they want, Lembit.
Yeah, the interesting thing about what you're saying there is basically that there's going to be a huge amount of credibility resting on this now, as you say. My worry is when Trump's entire reputation, to an extent, or a very large part of it, is dependent on proving that he didn't just nab a political problem. He actually got somebody who was causing trouble legally. That's a big problem. And if these boats have been carrying lots of drugs, to some extent they've destroyed the evidence, but it'd be very hard to connect it to Maduro, wouldn't it? I think we've got a frozen.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a
so you froze a bit. I just thought you were shocked there, Warren.
He is,
I think we've got a slight issue with.
So first of all, he's got to show that, of course. Are we okay?
Yeah, carry on. Yeah, I think there's a bit of lag.
Are we okay? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's got a major problem here. In, of course, that this. Why didn't you remove Zelensky? Zelensky is obviously corrupt to the bone. If you were going to remove people who were a problem, and of course you want peace with Russia, why didn't you remove Zelensky? It's quite obvious that most of his people are, should we say, have had their fingers in the cookie jar. And of course, NABU, which is run by America, have actually said this. So why wasn't Zelensky, when he was brought over, simply arrested and put on trial for corruption or whatever you want to call it?
You made a couple
staggering.
Of, you said it's obvious he's corrupt. It hasn't been proven to be corrupt. I understand what you mean, but he hasn't actually been proven guilty of corruption, though a lot of his people around him have, and also most of them have. But I have to tell you, a lot of people think of and have thought of Ukraine as a corrupt regime for decades. I'll talk about Ukraine after the break, but before we go further, Maduro is now, at time of broadcasting, in detention in New York. Do we know when the trial is likely to occur?
It's going to happen very, very quickly. They're talking in terms of within the next month of putting him on trial, because they want this thing to be done and they want it to be dusted and be over. And I do take your point about nothing's been proven about Zelensky, but neither has it about Maduro either. And here's the thing that we've got here. If there was one scintilla of evidence, I mean, if you were smart, Lembit, when one of these boats that you suspect carrying drugs, you stop the boat, you take all the drugs off that boat, and of course you're then able to prove your case. At least that the boats are doing smuggling. Yeah. But of course, it's proven that Ecuador and Mexico and many other countries are way ahead of Venezuela when it comes to drug smuggling. So it's going to be a very difficult thing to pin on him.
Okay, stay with us. You're watching Meet Lembit Öpik with Warren Thornton, who incidentally is based over in the Philippines. So we get the occasional glitch there in the system, but I still marvel that I live in a world where I can speak in real time with a picture, just like on Star Trek, with a man who is about 11,000 kilometers away. After the break, we're back to looking at the implications, which Warren Thornton's already touched on there. Do please like and subscribe to the station if you can on Unprecedented TV. Costs you nothing. Put my name in if you can't find it any other way. Lembit Öpik or Lembit, that'll be fine. But I want to ask Warren the question, what are the implications? What are the precedents? Before then, don't forget, we've got Claire Dyer and Dire Consequences on at least twice a week. Probably going to increase the frequency of putting her shows out by popular demand. She finds local issues and draws the national conclusions. Watch this. That is Claire Dyer with Dire Consequences, a superb investigative reporter in her own right. And she really does push the boat out there. Gets hassle for her campaigning. But you stick at it, Claire. You're an absolute diamond, an essential part of our operation, as is Warren Thornton, of course, investigative reporter. Which do you prefer to be, investigative reporter or investigative journalist?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've got to say that thank you very much for that, Lembit. Investigative journalist and geopolitical analyst, I suppose, now, with the amount of sort of invites we get now to go on other shows and talk about what's going on in the world. It is quite staggering, Lembit, isn't it, with the consequences that we're going to have from the fallout of this. This is the thing with America that I always think they never think it through before they do it. They tend to act and then deal with the consequences afterwards. And that has been disastrous in all their foreign policy around the world.
Nicolás Maduro, we're talking about, the president of Venezuela, and still the president of Venezuela. He hasn't stood down or anything. The president of Venezuela is in a New York prison. It'd be like Macron being nabbed and stuck in Belmarsh. It's like, or Starmer being kidnapped by the Irish and stuck in a detention center in Dublin. It's like extraordinary that this is what they've done. I don't know the man personally, but it's a pretty bold move. You really have to be able to prove it and prove that the case wasn't rigged, that there's authenticity in it. But Trump himself has no doubts about it. He's been waxing lyrical about the success of the operation and so forth. Before we talk about the implications, and there are a few, if you were to be a betting man, how do you predict this will play out?
Oh, this will play out. This will play out. The Americans will fabricate, even if they haven't got the evidence, they will fabricate it because this is what he's wanted. There's going to be all sorts of rows over this in the coming weeks, Lembit. There's going to be talks. There's a lot of people going to do a lot of talking, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to do too much about it. But they're going to have to. I mean, the courtroom will be a kangaroo court. The people will do. Whoever is there will find him guilty. He's not going to get a trial by jury, Lembit. That's not going to happen.
You don't think so? I don't know what the rules are in America for that. I'd have expected something as big as this would have a trial by jury. Incidentally, I don't completely understand if they've kind of extradited him on their own initiative, what the legal status of this court is. Are they allowed to do this? I'm not a lawyer.
Not really. There's going to be all sorts of legal ramifications, and that may stop it coming to trial for quite a while. Now, the whole idea that they've got, from what I understand from our source in the very close to the State Department, is that they're going to get this thing done. They're going to get him on trial. They're going to get him convicted and bang him up and prove to the world that, of course, this guy was indeed a drug lord, which the evidence for that is flimsy at very best. It is incredibly thin, and you have to make a lot of jumps to do that. But they're determined to do this, and if they do decide, rather than do it in a sort of tribunal, if they do decide to do it by a court, you wouldn't want to be one of the jurors in a million years who turned around and said no, not guilty, Lembit, because your life would be turned upside down by the three-letter agencies inside of America.
Well, Trump himself has no doubt there in his mind that they've done the right thing and so on. Trump has got historical reasons for really loathing drugs, the damage to his family. He doesn't even drink. He's teetotal, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't take any other drugs either. But, okay, so this thing is all locked and loaded to put him in front of a court, accused of these drug offenses. Let's look at the implications. Now, one of the things is that Maduro's got some pretty powerful allies. One of Donald Trump's mates, there he is, Vladimir Putin. He's probably watching with a lot of interest. And it seems to me the implication you described before is a rather legitimate one. I'm careful of what I say about Zelensky because he hasn't been proven to be guilty of corruption, but corruption stories come out again and again and again. And his former business partner ran away from Ukraine because of these accusations. And then his number two resigned just because somebody searched his flat for evidence of fraud. You said a very interesting thing. Maduro hasn't been found guilty of anything at this stage. What would Putin be able to say now about Zelensky? You could make an accusation. You could say, well, we're going to try him in a fair court in Moscow.
Yeah, this is absolutely the case. They could all, Xi Jinping could do the same thing over Taiwan. He could turn around and say that he's subverting the will, because remember that Taiwan is actually still part of China legally. So he could go in and nab the leader of Taiwan there. Could Kim Jong-un go and do the same thing in South Korea? He wouldn't at the moment, obviously, because there's a communist party who are in charge of South Korea. But would America then do that in South Korea, saying that Kim Jong-un and the Communist Party? So there are many, many things that could be taken, should we say, as read now. Because if you turn around and say that it's fine for America to do it and nobody else, you look idiotic on the world stage.
So there's a plus the problem. That's what I'm wondering about with Zelensky. As you say, the burden of proof is comparable in the sense that we've been told Zelensky is corrupt. He hasn't been tried, but nor has Maduro. And there's got to be someone in Moscow who's figuring that out. And I'm just surprised that the Americans weren't thinking about it. Here's one of the headlines. Zelensky's image is stained as corruption inquiry shakes his inner circle. The revelations are a remarkable reversal for the Ukrainian president, who once presented himself as a leader who would clean up the country's politics. One thing's for sure, he hasn't cleaned up the country's politics, because you get these $100 million plus scams, one to do with energy, I think, recently. And one of the things, I'll speculate, but I won't prognosticate. I wonder how he got so rich, so very, very wealthy himself, Zelensky, on a comparatively meager presidential salary. So that's a problem, you said. And there's another problem, as you've described, the Taiwanese. That's been an issue for the Chinese for decades. And they're very honest with me. When I was the deputy chair of the All-Party China Group, which I did as a member of parliament, I had lunch with the ambassador, I believe it was, for China in London, and he explained their territorial ambitions and their position, and I read back on it. And sure enough, they have always said it's part of China. There's a lot of business between Taiwan and China as well. Yes. Tons of trade. People don't realize it's not like they're two isolated countries. They're almost like two systems, one country, almost. Not quite, but then they've been doing some war games fairly recently as well, which are quite dramatic. Here's I think how they sort of surrounded Taiwan. What was all this about?
Well, this is all about because, of course, America are giving the biggest ever package they possibly can to Taiwan to build up their military, should we say, structure against China. They're also getting Japan to take sides in this. And, of course, Japan were talking about literally rockets and missiles on islands that are surrounding Taiwan, pointing at China, which upset the Chinese quite greatly. Now, the Chinese are already talking. Other people, the hardliners in China, are already talking. Well, if Trump can do that, why can't we do that in Taiwan? And getting back to your point with Zelensky, we know that most people believe that Maduro is not guilty of being a drug lord and that America are getting out of order. But here's where you make a brilliant point, Lembit, that nobody's taken up, and I've heard nobody talk about this yet, is people don't believe that Maduro is a drug lord. Almost everybody in the West believes that Zelensky is corrupt, whether he is or not. And nobody will bat an eyelid about Putin grabbing Zelensky because they already believe that Zelensky's absolutely corrupt.
Well, they would bat an eyelid because we have double standards. But they've got problems. I saw an absolutely abysmal, absolutely road crash interview by Starmer. I know that's featured in your show later on, so I won't go into it. But he couldn't take a side. He wasn't able to understand the situation and so forth. But China has been doing these war games, and woe betide anybody who thinks they can beat the Chinese military. I mean, it's enormous, and their weapons are the sort of thing you want in your under the Christmas tree. They're like toys for the boys. The incredible drones, and then a mothership drone that launches other drones, and all this other stuff. It's absolutely stunning, formidable, and it's quite obvious that China is saying we can do this anytime we want. Come and have a go if you think you're hot enough. And I think there is a problem now because their defense could be, well, we think that somebody in Taiwan is corrupt, and we'll go and extradite them. I suppose it's hard in a way. It's not exactly terrible, but I think that there's a real moral problem now because of what America has done. I'm generally fairly sympathetic to a lot of what Donald Trump does, but this is so high risk, Warren.
Yeah, it's completely, as far as I'm concerned, this changes the international rules-based order that everybody goes on about, which is basically do as America says, has just been ripped up because everybody can go, okay, we will do what America do. But they're trying to say, do as we tell you rather than do what we do. But here's where we have a problem, Lembit. Now, this is from friends of mine that I know that are very close to Pentagon sources. Every single war game, and people will go, oh, America this and China are not very. In every single war game scenario that the Americans, that the Pentagon have mapped out against China, they lose every single one.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And they are not happy. The military do not want to go into China. What they want to do is create a buffer zone, an economic buffer zone, many miles out using the Philippines, Cambodia, and right round in a line there, and then a secondary buffer zone even further back because they do not want to get into a physical war with China. They're quite happy if Japan or the Philippines or somebody else does on their behalf, and they'll promise them the moon, of course, and then fail to deliver. But if they do so and they do get a proxy to fight this war, it'll be over in very short order.
And not to anyone's favor apart from China.
No, exactly.
So their own wargaming indicates that they will lose, which doesn't surprise me at all, Warren. I cannot understand how anyone would think that a conventional war could be won by America against China in China's backgarden or backyard, basically. And if it goes nuclear, we all lose. So that would seem to be pointless as well. Just in terms of the China, can we just get that picture of the of the exercises? They can basically surround Taiwan. They could isolate it. They could blockade it, couldn't they? Just like America did with Cuba. And here's the other irony. I've heard talk about maybe America doing something to Cuba. That's not gone well before. Is that serious?
Yeah, absolutely. It's serious because you have to remember that Marco Rubio has a warm one for Cuba. And in many respects, Marco Rubio is the guiding light, if you like, or little Damien from the Omen, depending on which way you view him. And of course, he's very much got the warm ones for Cuba. You have to remember he's of that descent. And you also have to remember that he has to show very much that he's against the drugs and he's against Cuba and everything else because his own brother-in-law was, arrested for dealing drugs in his house. And he actually helped him when he was on the state commission, helped him get his own license when he came out, Joe.
Is that a fact?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a documented fact. Marco Rubio actually helped his brother-in-law get a real estate license to be a real estater when he came out of prison. Wow. He was dealing drugs from Rubio's house, and Rubio turned around and said he knew nothing about it.
Oh, well, have to take him at his word, I suppose. Let's get back to this. But I didn't know that. I just sincerely hope you're right. We'll have to check that out. So my team will have a look at it now, but I'll have to take you on trust on that one. Let's get back to Nicolás Maduro, the man of the moment, really. He's now, if you're watching this live, languishing in some kind of detention center in America. No prospect of bail, whatever. Let's not pretend. I wonder if the short-term gain will lead to long-term pain for Trump in America. What do you think his Make America Great Again allies and supporters, the MAGA movement, will think of this?
I think the MAGA movement will go along with it. It will be presented as he is, Marjorie Taylor Greene has already come out and showed her support for Donald Trump on this matter. And of course, they'll do this. But once again, it's a big country, a massive country with massive firepower, basically dictating terms to somebody much smaller, if you like. And around the world, people are just seeing this as America, the bullies of the world.
And I assume that Keir Starmer has absolutely no influence whatever on the situation.
Oh, none at all. Starmer has been left out in the cold. It was a very strange thing because when Starmer did his press conference, he turned around and he said, well, I don't have enough information. I'm going to have to talk to Starmer and our allies. I'm going to have to talk to Trump, and our allies, which basically gave the game away that Starmer doesn't see Trump as an ally at all.
What a careless mistake he made there. And he's been, as I said before, once again, I don't want to go too far into it because I know we cover it more in detail in your program, but he just seemed completely out of touch with the Maduro situation. He said, as you said, he didn't have the facts. So either he wasn't kept in the loop by Trump, which I'm pretty sure is the case.
Yes.
Or either that, or he just hasn't bothered using his enormous resources to find out what's going on. But either way, it just sounded ridiculous and embarrassing that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom couldn't give a definitive response to what was going on over in Venezuela. And it just shows really how weak the government really is in this country. But back to the motivations, you said there's one thing that could be behind all of this. It's the black gold. Venezuela's got the highest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. It's incredible, and yet they're dirt poor.
Yeah, crude oil, very much so. And of course, they're turning around and saying that we're going to get all this black gold out of the ground. We're going to make Venezuelans very, very happy and everything else. But it's a strange anomaly. The American oil companies are saying it hasn't been run properly and this and the other. But it's the American oil companies that have been making the Venezuelans poor. Let's not forget the sanctions and everything else. But in the meantime, the oil companies have been getting rich. They're only going to get richer.
Yeah. And Trump will, I guess, be following this with a lot of interest. He's certainly playing a high stakes game this time. And, well, we'll see how it plays out. That and Epstein just means that Americans under Trump are the gift that keep on giving. Though I've also noticed that the mainstream media have been really very mealy-mouthed about it as well. They just don't seem to, they don't know which side to be on. They're not sure who they're not sure who they dare to upset. That's what seems to be the case for me there. But thanks very much. Now, as I've said, 11 a.m. Monday to Friday. Normally, we have Warren Thornton's program, and it goes into a lot more depth on this if you're watching this live, 11 a.m. Where else can we get another dose of Warren Thornton?
Well, we're Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. warrenthornton.com or over on Patreon. And of course,
I think he's frozen again there. He'll be back in a second. That's warrenthornton.com. You can get him there and elsewhere as well. I think we may have lost him that time. Thank you so much to Warren Thornton. That was saved by the bell a little bit there. Warren has got great insight because he's got great contacts. What Warren says, I take seriously. My opinion is to abduct or to apprehend the president of a country of 30 million people. That's a pretty bold move. The court is going to be the determinant of what happens next in terms of the reputation of this particular operation to extract Maduro against his will from Venezuela. But I still think it could work if credibly he can show that Maduro has been involved in organized drug smuggling. If credibly he can do that, that probably would be a win for Trump. The question is, can Maduro have a fair trial? What can we believe? There are so many variables I can't really guess, but we live in interesting times. And we seek to cover those interesting times here on Unprecedented TV. Please do like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. And you can also have a chat with me on X. So follow me on X, please. And like and subscribe on Unprecedented TV. Lots more coming up this week and every week. 2026 is the year for unprecedented television. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.